Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about imminent and imminency. And we have some stuff that may be coming down the pike really, really soon, and it could be a big deal. One of them, of course, is Donald Trump being arrested. Some of this was being spread over the internet. Now, we don't really know exactly what's going on because some of this is rumor. Some of this has been corroborated by other news entities. We don't really know what Trump and his lawyers are hearing or what they're seeing. We are going to break down the latest on this. We've got a couple articles to attend to. One from the Washington Post, which I actually thought did a really nice job on summarizing what this is all about. We've talked a lot about Alvin Bragg here. We've talked a lot about Cyrus Vance. We've talked a lot about Letitia James, the tishiest of all the tishies over there in New York City. And they all have wanted Trump for a long time. They prosecuted Alan Weisselberg and other people. They've just been like little vultures trying to find a carcass, and they're just hovering around Trump for years now. So we're going to go into that. Good background from WaPo. CNN said that this may not be a done deal yet, right? There actually may be another witness that needs to be presented to the grand jurors, which will take place tomorrow, Monday. And we'll see what they say about this, right? I mean, they if they don't actually have an indictment and they still need to present evidence and then determine whether or not to indict, this may not be something that happens exactly on Tuesday. Now, we again don't know. We'll get into that a little bit more. What's interesting about a lot of this is about the reaction. So this individual on Twitter at MIZD put together a very nice reaction thread that I want to run through. And he was sort of cataloging a lot of the individuals who were responding to this. We have Vivek, who is running for the presidency. And so we'll listen to him. He's really being very vocal about this, saying that even if this is a rumor, this is insane. We got to shut this down right now. The prospect of prosecuting a former president and a sitting presidential candidate, right? He's actually announced he's running, is nuts. And so he's out there talking about that loudly. We'll check in with Byron Donalds. Also found a clip from Christie. And a lot of people are coming to support Trump. I also did want to take a look at one of the statutes. People are asking, what is he being charged with? Right? This involves Stormy Daniels and a saga that erupted back before Trump was even running for the first presidency back in 2016. Right? All this was cleaned up prior to that presidential run. So what law is he breaking? People are speculating it might be this one, falsifying business records in the first degree. So I wanted to take a look at that. I also grabbed what I think are the most recent jury instructions. And these are very useful when we're talking about the law. The law can be complex, very dry, very dreary. But a lot of this is the grand jury instructions will translate some of the thick law into the translatable, more for the lay person, right? For a juror to actually read and understand. So we'll go through that. Trump posted a bunch of stuff over the weekend. Protest, he said. So we will have to take a look at that. There was a reaction to this. Weisman, we are familiar with him very, very much. One of these guys who's been salivating for a Trump indictment for years now. He's responding to this, and he said those truth posts are illegal. Remember that guys like him were very upset about Trump's tweets, and they used to say Trump's tweets are illegal. Now his truth posts might be illegal because he didn't use the word peaceful, and he didn't abide by the terms of service that Andrew Weisman thinks that should be applicable anytime you post. We're also going to check in with Mike Pence because Mike Pence got into this with somebody over at ABC, and this ABC guy is hyperventilating over the post again. It's really weird. They're not upset about the fact that a political hack known as Alvin Bragg is potentially prosecuting and indicting Trump. They're more upset about Trump posting on Truth Social. It's a bizarre thing. They have TDS to the max. I saw in the chat, it's TDS Sunday, baby. Should get a theme song like NFL opener or something like that. TDS Sunday. Boom, 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 boom. Who has it the worst? Boom, today. So we'll also check in with Joe's Criminality because he is, I don't know what he is. We talked about this on Locals Saturday morning, and this was just a wild clip if you haven't seen it yet. It's hard to understand what Joe knows or what he doesn't know, or if he's cognizant or not. And so we'll watch this clip and you can be the judge of his capabilities. All of that in our first segment. And then we're going to get caught up because remember, tomorrow we're going to be back in session. Court's going to be back and we'll be on day 40 of the Proud Boys trial. But because we couldn't do a stream on Friday, we have to catch up on day 39. Now, the good news is Friday was very light. It was about 60 tweets And so we'll be able to get caught up on the trial pretty quickly, not a ton of activity, but they were interviewing, or I'm sorry, examining here Mark Carrion. He was the U.S. Capitol Police officer. He was the last guy on the stand on Thursday when we left off. A few more questions from him. Looks like the prosecutors are going to wrap up with him tomorrow on Monday on day 40. And so, as usual, we'll check in with the live stream or the live tweet thread from our friend Roger Parloff at rparloff on Twitter. And so, my friends, as you can see, we have a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the broadcast, my friends, the best place to do that is by going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an amazing community there. We have a Telegram channel. We do member-only live streams. If you join us on YouTube, you can click the join member button as well. Become a member anywhere you join us. We do talk about extra stuff. We were talking about health and wellness yesterday, or on Saturday, which was yesterday. We were talking about financial wherewithal. We're talking about sovereignty. We're talking about interviews and job prospects. And we're going to be doing this week a Genius Network debrief, sort of a quarterly debrief every quarter. I think it's appropriate to do a look back, kind of a 90-day look back. How were things? And I've got some notes from the event that I was at last week to share with you. So for members only, stuff like that, join up, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, want to shout out our amazing friends over at fieldofgreens.com, because my goodness, my friends, vegetables want to be eaten. The fruits want to be eaten. They're delicious. They're nutritious. They go down easy when they are put together in this brilliant formula from our friends at fieldofgreens.com. And if you go there, you can save 15% off with Robert, the code at checkout, to get your real organic superfood, your daily servings of fruits and vegetables. It's delicious. The vegetables want to be eating. You're going to love it. So check out fieldofgreens.com and don't forget to use code Robert. Lastly, my friends, I want to shout out our former law firm. I'm no longer at the R&R Law Group, but they are still there, kicking butt, helping good people charged with crimes in the state of Arizona find safety, clarity, and hope. You can find them online at rrlawaz.com. All right, so let's get right into it. Donald Trump arrest imminent or not? We don't know exactly. We're trying to piece together exactly what is going on out of the Department of, no, this is out of Alvin Bragg's office. This is out of the New York City Attorney's Office. And so we're going to go into this and learn more about the background and the details on this case. The Washington Post is reporting that Alvin Bragg is the prosecutor assigned, and he's bringing this zombie case back to life. And we've spent a lot of time talking about this guy. He's a newly elected individual in New York, and there was a period of time where we thought he was going to let this whole thing go. Turns out that hasn't happened yet. The article says, it was just weeks into his time in office, he was being assailed on multiple fronts. He released a memo that was outlining his strategy for prosecuting crimes, and some people were saying that it looked like he was not going to prosecute Trump. They were freaked out about this. They said, what are you talking about? We just got you elected. How could we possibly just have gotten you into office and now you're not going to do the very thing we got you elected for? So people say that two prosecutors' office quit. And I think we may have even read their letters here. They were very upset. How dare you let him go? And how dare you not do what the people elected you to do, and so on and so forth. And people say that Bragg was deeply stung by the criticism. And so he goes to the same cocktail parties. He can't go around New York City and be the guy who didn't prosecute Trump. Gosh, what a smear that would be. So he soon issued then an unusual public statement after the fact. All the political pressure came down to bear upon him, emphasizing that the investigation into Trump and his business was far from over and that we're exploring evidence that was not previously explored. All right. He wanted to convey the message that I'm still on the case. Yeah. Now, a year later, one particular issue comes to the top, a payment made before the 2016 presidential election to Stormy Daniels. Are you serious? She's back. This was what this is all about her. Grand jury in Manhattan looking at the case. Could be on the precipice of charging Trump. Don't know whether an indictment's going to happen or not. Looming legal decision is bubbling up. Big challenge for Bragg. Been lumped into a bunch of other cases. Now, Bragg, what was previously saying that they were continuing to work on this. We're going to do our talking in the courtroom. He got that line from Merrick Garland. But some legal experts, this is interesting, they're scratching their heads. Why are we still talking about a 2016 case involving Stormy Daniels? Why this particular investigation might be the first one to result in an indictment? They say it's an unusual case, is what these legal experts say, which is a nice way of saying it's a garbage case. It's trash. It shouldn't have been brought, given that the potential charges involved, as well as the fact that prosecutors have repeatedly examined the details of this case, but decided not to pursue the charges. Other offices have already declined this. So Alvin Bragg is scraping the bottom of the barrel to try to dig this back up, because this was something that he implied was going to be the reason for getting elected in the first place. To fail on that promise is not going to be useful for his career. That case involved Michael Cohen, $130,000 payment made before the election. Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, so Stormy, all acknowledged the payments. Michael Cohen went to jail for this. He pled guilty to 2 additional crimes. At times in 2022, you remember her, Tish James complained that Bragg's office seemed uninterested in pursuing charges against Trump. She's the woman that had the facial spasms many times when she was campaigning. They'd say, what's your purpose for existence, Tishy? And she would say, to prosecute Trump. And her face would contort, almost like that guy out of Star Wars. And she said that they needed to push for a more aggressive posture. 2 people familiar with the matter said, asking to respond, the official in James's office said, we disagree with that characterization. So Trump responded to a lot of this. We'll take a look at his reaction. And we don't know ultimately whether this is going to come into an indictment or not. It's certainly seeming like it is. Now, CNN had a little bit of additional detail for us. They posted this today, Sunday, March 19th. Trump says he expects to be arrested on Tuesday. Possible indictment coming. Now, a lot of the time, when you're representing somebody who is under investigation, you have an open line of communication with the prosecutor's office. My guess is that his lawyers are trying to communicate with them to say, are you going to indict him? Will you let us know? Will you let us know if an indictment does come back, so that we can coordinate a self-surrender? We can show up. We don't need another raid. We know that they're just chomping at the bit to go and raid Trump wherever they possibly can. But can we avoid that? So there should be an open line of communication. And if Trump is communicating, I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday, my first instinct was to say his lawyers have told him that we're going to coordinate a self-surrender. But we don't know. If there's not an actual indictment yet, who's coordinating this timeline? How do we know it's a Tuesday arrest if that's not a coordinated self-surrender date? I don't know. CNN says that Trump on Saturday said he expects to be arrested in connection with a years-long investigation into Stormy. Social media posts, we'll read that later. CNN's John Miller reported on Friday that meetings have been going on throughout the week among the city, state, and federal law enforcement agencies about security preparations for a possible indictment. So again, we still, has the indictment hit yet? Do we have a date yet? In an echo of Trump's appeals, he said to protest, we'll read that, any indictment who's running for a re-election would mark an historic first. And we've been speculating this was going to happen for a long time. I feel like the Democrats have painted themselves into a corner in a massive way. They've been sitting here telling us that Donald Trump committed the worst attack on American democracy since the Civil War. If they don't prosecute him as a result of that characterization of what he did and what happened here, then they're allowing that person to just go free. And their words then are meaningless, right? They're basically feckless bloviators who just talk about nothing, which would be true if they really, or they don't believe that and they're being disingenuous and this is all just a political show. So, but I think for their constituency, I think for the Democrats, if they don't prosecute Trump, man, they're going to be very upset about this. They're in control. They're in power. This has been a promise to them for a long time. And every time Trump comes back into the story, he is now a bigger and bigger boogeyman. Now he's an insurrectionist who wants to commit and endorse seditious conspiracy of America. So it's kind of crazy, but it is also historic, and it's crazy to think about that they would go that far. But we were sitting here not expecting them to raid his FBI, or the FBI to raid his Mar-a-Lago residence. I would have never suspected that Michael Sussman would be delivering, sitting down with James Baker. Then James Baker would go over to Twitter, and this incestuous, disgusting cabal of people would be involved in the things that they're doing. And so every rock that we turn over, there's just another disgusting revelation out of our government, and it just continues on. So an indictment, even though it would be historic, and it seems like unbelievable, really, that we'd be going down this route, it is not a foregone conclusion. So Trump has an extensive history of civil litigation. Another witness, here you go. This is what I wanted to share. Another witness is expected to testify on Monday before the grand jury that's investigating this, according to a source familiar with the investigation. It is not clear whether this would be the final witness before it votes on a possible indictment. Now, Trump's legal team has been participating and anticipating that an indictment will happen soon, and they've been preparing behind the scenes for the next steps. This guy, Joe Tacopina, is an attorney for Trump. He said that the president had based his claims on press reports. Okay, so nothing internal. So it may not be on this Tuesday date after all. He said that no one tells us anything, which is very frustrating. President Trump is basing his response on press reports. So then it may not actually be something that's happening officially on Tuesday. When Trump said it, I thought it was an agreed upon self-surrender date. Now it's not looking like that. They may not even have an indictment yet. A spokesman for Trump said earlier Saturday that the former president has not received a notification about this from the DA's office, but was rightfully highlighting his innocence in his post. Now, previewing a potential line of defense from Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, others were reacting, Mike Pence was reacting, and we're going to go through all of that in short order. But that's some of the background here. Now, I wanted to share, let's go over to Trump's Truth Social posts and see what we have here for us, because these were getting a lot of attention from some people. Now, this one was the first one that he posted, said, now illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan DA's office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicates that with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back. So I think that maybe he's referring to other press reports about that date. I don't have the official source for that, but it was a Tuesday date, and that led me to believe it was a self-surrender date. And it sounds like it may not be Tuesday, it may be Thursday, right? If he's indicted, they present another witness. Maybe it is Tuesday. Maybe he's indicted Monday, and boom, they want him there Tuesday. We'll see. But it seems like it's sort of not a hard and fast date. Now, the date doesn't really matter. Okay, we can all split hairs about the date. Whether it's this Tuesday, next Tuesday, or a month from Tuesday, it's just a date. And if they indict Donald Trump, it doesn't really matter when the date is. So I think a lot of people are sort of also getting caught up on that area. But point is, here is what Donald Trump posted more recently. He said, it's time. He said, we're a nation in steep decline, being led into World War III by a crooked politician who doesn't even know he's alive, but who is surrounded by evil and sinister people based on their actions on defunding the police, which we watch them here, have chronicled here for a long time, destroying our military, open borders here in Arizona and elsewhere, no voter ID, inflation, raising taxes, and much more. Can only hate our now failing USA. We can't just allow this anymore. They're killing our nation as we sit back and watch. We must save America. Protest, 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 exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. And so that's his statement. And just a reminder here, you're allowed to protest in America, right? Protest implies peaceful protesting. It's not breaking the law. It's not going out there and doing anything violent. You're allowed to protest. That's perfectly acceptable in this country. Now, we're going to listen to a bunch of people hyperventilate about this and say, this is more fight like hell talk. You remember that, okay? They said that fight like hell was literally insurrect America. They equated the two together, and they have spent the last 2+ years twisting themselves into a little pretzel to try to concoct this narrative to support that claim. So they're going to point to this language. It's time. You can say that stuff all the time. I think they say that at the UFC events, right? It's time, and then they go out there and they beat the hell out of each other. So it's not that we're suggesting we do that, right? That's UFC. This is a peaceful protest. They're different things, but it's not illegal to say that stuff. Now, there's going to be arguments that it's irresponsible and other things, and whether people should go protest or not. And if you've been covering us here on this channel at all in the Proud Boys cases, you know that many of these types of avenues are infested with feds all over the place. And so we'll get into that a little bit more in our next segment. But that is what Donald Trump said. And so there's going to be a reaction to that. We're turning our attention over to this individual at Don Will on Twitter, who did a great job assembling a lot of the reaction to this. And I want to run through a couple of these. He said, if you want to follow him, this is the address. Says, here's the thread from potential GOP officials and candidates. Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of the first ones out of the gate. She chimed in, said, Biden's DOJ is coordinating with the Democrat Manhattan DA to arrest Donald Trump and top presidential candidate for 2024 with a fake misdemeanor charge. Says it's all for politics. This is what they do in communist countries to destroy their opponents. Republicans in Congress must subpoena these communists and end this. We have the power to do it, and we also have the power to defund their salaries and departments. Enough of this. Now, the American people deserve a government that actually works for them, not a bunch of self-centered communists who bail out their donors, protect the elites, and wield their power to punish their political enemies. Right? And so this is one theory of things that could be done, right? Trump could say, it's time. What does it mean? Well, yeah, you defund them. You take away their money. Subpoena them. You bring them in. You hold them in for questioning, right? All of that stuff is perfectly acceptable in this country. The Democrats are capable of doing it. So I guess that means the Republicans should be allowed to as well. Now, Vivek was somebody else who chimed in on this, and I actually downloaded a clip from him because he had an interesting phone call, and he's been very outspoken about this. One of the things you'll notice is that some people were really not talking about this. Other presidential candidates, people like Ron DeSantis in particular, are being criticized for being a little bit slow to react to this. Others are being very quick to react, and they're jumping all over it. Vivek is one of them, who is a presidential candidate, and here's what he had to say when he was on a phone call.
I'm going to campaign events in South Carolina here today. I'm curious how other audience members see it as well. I wouldn't be surprised if there are others in this race who are quietly celebrating it. But I think that for me, I'm in this for a reason, to revive a national identity. And I said this on stage at CPAC, by the way. And this was in some ways directed at differentiating myself from Trump. This is to a pro-Trump audience. You know, the thing you're coached to say is don't talk about Trump. I actually didn't. On stage, I said, look, I said all the reasons why I respect what he did. But the question I asked is, are we on a path to a national divorce, or do we want a national revival? And the case for my candidacy is I am in the camp of a national revival. I do not want to see a national divorce in this country. And I think that I'm running because I'm best positioned to unify the country. I personally know Donald Trump. I think he cares about national unity too. I'm running because I think I'm better positioned to deliver it. And I made that case to the CPAC audience, pro-Trump audience, differentiating myself from Donald Trump. So I'm not afraid to do that. But if I'm looking at today's announcement, but if I just finish for 1 second, today's announcement, I worry about for the same reason that I differentiate myself from Trump, is that I think this takes us a step closer to a national divorce. I think that when you politicize the justice system itself to prosecute a political opponent of the party in power, the lead political opponent of the party in power, that is not one small step, but a giant leap towards a national divorce if they follow through it too. And so it's in some ways the same reason that I'm drawn into this race as a candidate running against Trump that also draws me to be a hardliner against the possibility that Trump be indicted on ministerial and politicized grounds.
Interesting perspective, creating two choices for us in his perspective: a national revival, which he wants to lead, or a national divorce, which is what a weaponized DOJ would lead to. And I think that there is some truth to that. I think that every time we go down this road of escalation, and we've talked a lot about this here, I said when the J6 stupid, illegally constituted fake select committee was constituted, the Republicans were going to do the same thing, and they're going to do that, right? And we'll see if that continues to escalate. But if there's not a response to one party making an egregious perversion of our system, if the other side doesn't do it or doesn't eliminate the side making those perversions, then they're going to lose, right? It's either you you adapt or die. And so the Republicans are going to have to either play their game or outsmart them in some way, shape, or form. And the question is, can they do that? And this concept of a national divorce or a national revival or civil war, I saw a great super chat from Zulu come in, we'll get to later. But we're talking about what the future of the world looks like and the future of America and what our justice system looks like. And if Donald Trump gets indicted, we're opening the door to other Democrats now being indicted. Okay. As soon as the balance of power shifts, that's what we're opening the door to. We want just a bunch of criminal prosecutions of all of our politicians. That's what we're going to be going down that road. It's going to be a scary thing. And whether that leads to a national divorce or a national exit, which is a different concept we've also talked a lot about here, remains to be seen. But that was what Vivek had to say. There were some other reactions. Matt Gaetz was here, and we had one from J.D. Vance. Gaetz said, virtually every campaign finance violation involves either 1, spending other people's money illegally, or 2, taking money into your campaign that you shouldn't. Trump did neither. He used his own money to resolve a private dispute, irrespective of any campaign. The impending indictment is based on an untested, tortured legal theory. This is an absurd abuse of the criminal process in our politics. It must be seen for the partisan, pathetic ploy that it is. Good comment there from Gaetz. J.D. Vance chimed in on this one. He said, Alvin Bragg is bought by George Soros. He allows violent criminals to walk the streets in New York, but will prosecute the likely Republican nominee and former president on a baseless misdemeanor charge? These are the people trying to turn America into a third world country. Says, I've been asked by multiple reporters if an indictment would lead me to rescind my endorsement of Trump. The answer is hell no. A politically motivated prosecution makes the argument for Trump even stronger. We simply don't have a real country if justice depends on politics, which is true, because then it's the first through the door. Whoever gets the attorney general wins. Whoever gets in control of the DOJ wins. Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, chimed in on this, says, here we go again. An outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who lets violent criminals walk as he pursues political vengeance against President Trump. I'm directing relevant committees to immediately investigate if federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy by interfering in elections with politically motivated prosecutions. Republicans strike back, start defunding New York City, and the war continues. So as you see, there are other comments here, and I'll invite you to go check out this thread from Ms. D, who shared a bunch of those there. But back over to some of the clips. Byron Donalds in the House of Representatives was on Fox News, and he said, this is a terrible use of our justice system.
Congressman, thanks very much for being here. Before we get into finance, your thoughts on President Trump about to be arrested on Tuesday?
I think this is one of the worst uses of the justice system we've ever seen. This kind of two-tier prosecution, this gotcha mentality with the criminal justice system is flat out wrong. And Maria, let me also say this. There has been in the past uses of the criminal justice system in America that have been wrong. It's been about targeting. It's been wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just going after your political adversary and President Trump isn't going to make you some pillar of virtue. It's going to descend all of America into further chaos. Not what we need at all. What Alvin Bragg is doing is wrong. He shouldn't be going after Donald Trump, period.
Well, that's their entire purpose for existence, right? That's basically why he ran. That's almost the entire campaign promise of Tishy Latish James, which I don't think I have that clip handy right now, but let's see. Do we have Latish? We got a bunch of Letitia clips. We'll have to dig one up later. Let's see what this one is.
5 witnesses and review of millions of documents that were submitted by Mr. Trump and others.
Marching to the polls in our high heels and even...
Yeah, okay. So you see what's going on there in New York. All right, that's Byron Donalds. We also have Chris Christie. Now, Chris Christie is also fired up about this, interestingly. He said that there's a revolving door of criminality out of New York, and they are not focusing on what actually matters.
Let me tell you who doesn't enforce law and order when it comes to gun violence. I go into New York City every week. It is a danger zone to go into Manhattan because Alvin Bragg is running a revolving door and not prosecuting gun crime, not prosecuting violent criminals. And if he does, he lets them out within 4 hours of when they're arrested to commit more crimes. So let's not get into that argument because Alvin Bragg has failed miserably. And all of a sudden he wants to get tough on Donald Trump.
They are excusing all of their failures, right? All of the other terrible job performance that they are responsible for. They can just paper over that. Oh, but we did Trump. And a lot of the people in the city will remember that. They'll be happy about that. They'll say, congratulations, you're doing a great job. You're reelected again, because that's for some reason what is captivating their minds 24/7. It's just Trump, Trump, Trump nonstop. It's a bizarre situation. So we'll listen to more reaction from Pence and from Andrew Weisman, but I wanted to take a quick look at the statute itself, as well as some of the jury instructions, so we can see potentially what he might be indicted for. This comes out from the New York Senate government website. Section 175.10 is one potential charge that is being contemplated in the indictment process. It is section 175.10, falsifying business records in the first degree. Not a complicated statute at all. A person is guilty of falsifying business records in the first degree when he commits the crime of falsifying business records in the second degree, and when his intent to defraud includes an intent to commit another crime or to aid in the concealment thereof. All right, so we've got sort of a conjunctive phrase here. We've got two things. We've got some conduct, falsifying business records with intent. You've got a mens rea, a guilty mind, and a guilty action. Falsifying business records is a Class E felony. So not a lot there. Now, there was something else that I found, and let's get this one queued up and get our red pen out so we can mark this puppy up. But this is something that I believe is the most recent jury instruction for this charge. So the law that we just read, very basic, kind of hard to dissect. What does it exactly mean? So when this charge gets prosecuted, he gets indicted, it goes through the court. Prosecutor says, we're going to trial on this. Case is presented, opening, closing arguments, handed off to the jury. What does the jury look at when deciding whether somebody is guilty or not? So this is kind of the rough structure of this. Falsifying business records in the first degree, they say, under our law, when they do the following things, they're guilty. Intent to defraud, we already read all that. So one of them could be this, right? Make or causes a false entry in the business records, or alters or erases a business records, or omits a business records, or prevents the making of an entry into a business record. And so an enterprise, right? It's giving us a lot more definitions. What is a business record? Means any writing or article. Intent, what does a guilty mind entail? In order for you to find the defendant guilty of the crime, so this would be Trump, the people are required to prove that on or about the date in the city that Trump made or caused a false entry in business records, or altered or deleted or destroyed or something like that. All right, you see how this works? And that Trump did so with the intent to defraud or to commit the cover-up of another crime. So if he sort of checks all those boxes, we talk a lot about check boxes here. Now, if the people have proven that guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, both elements, then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you must find the defendant guilty of this crime. But if you, the people, have not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that either one of those elements, if either one of those check boxes fails, the conduct and the guilty mind doesn't apply. Now, if you find that he's guilty, we must also talk about affirmative defenses, and we'll just talk about this quickly. What are some of Trump's potential defenses according to this? They say under our law, it is an affirmative defense that at the time that he or she engaged in the conduct, that they were just a mere employee. Was Trump a mere employee? No. Merely executed the orders of somebody else? Probably not. And so they tell you that That's what he's got to prove in order to use that defense. Now, if he does use that defense, if he turns around and says, hey, you know what? I was actually this person. I was just essentially the client. I was following the advice of my attorney. I was following the advice of my lawyers, my bookkeeper, my CPA, my financial advisors, tax advisors, whatever. I was following their direction. They would probably say that it still brought him a personal benefit. And so that affirmative defense wouldn't really fly, I don't think, but we'll see. Now, this is a rough outline of what the jury instructions might look like if Trump's case were to proceed to trial. But the question is, he's not even been indicted yet. And people are saying he's already on the border of committing crimes. In fact, this guy, who used to be a big-time DOJ prosecutor for 140 years or whatever it was, he is named Andrew Weisman. And he was on MSNBC explaining his opinion about that. And Andrew says, Donald Trump is very close to committing a whole new insurrection in America all over again.
Final point is his language in that Truth Social, where he stays just on this side of the law by saying you should protest. Of course, everyone has a constitutional right to protest.
That's right.
Peacefully. The language, take our nation back, it's a little closer to the line. And it's notable to me that he did not say you should protest peacefully. It was sort of conspicuous that he left that word out, even though, as we all know, on January 6th, he did throw that word in, which gave him some potential legal cover, but he didn't do that here.
Gosh, they want to prosecute him again. They're so upset about it. And it's not just him. He's there. I guess he shouldn't even post anything. He should just make sure that he runs every possible tweet by Andrew Weisman. Otherwise, he may get in trouble. Now, Mike Pence also was being interviewed by some other hysteric on ABC. Kind of hilarious. Listen to this guy. The first question out of the gate to Mike Pence is not about whether Alvin Bragg is a psychopath who's going to be undermining the entire judicial system of the United States. No, it's about whether Trump's truth post was irresponsible.
As I'm sure you've seen, Donald Trump is saying that he's going to be indicted on Tuesday. He's calling for people to protest. Now, we don't know if that's true. The Manhattan DA has not said anything about it. But he's calling for people to protest. Is that irresponsible?
Well, first, let me say I'm taken aback at the idea of.
What kind of a ridiculous question is that? He's calling for people to protest. People are allowed to protest. It's in the First Amendment. And Donald Trump, presumably, according to a lot of news reports, and even from CNN, which he's probably got a bunch of friends over there, they're all saying that they are on the final stages of an indictment. One more witness on Monday, and then it's a foregone conclusion. So, yeah, people are going to be upset about that. People can voice their voices and can be heard. But his question is not even about the cause, which is really the most reprehensible thing of this entire charade. It's more about Trump's post. Nuts.
It's true. The Manhattan DA has not said anything about it. But he's calling for people to protest. Is that irresponsible?
Well, first, let me say I'm taken aback at the idea of indicting a former president of the United States.
Nuts.
At a time when there's a crime wave in New York City, that the fact that the Manhattan DA thinks that indicting President Trump is his top priority, I think, just tells you everything you need to know about the radical left in this country. It just feels like a politically charged prosecution here. And I, for my part, I just feel like it's just not what the American people want to see. We got real challenges in this country today, John. People are facing record inflation, a crisis at our border. We have war in Eastern Europe. The American people are anxious about the future. And here we go again, back into another politically charged prosecution directed at the former president of the United States. And I would just hope for better.
But he's calling on people to protest, to come out and protest, take our nation back. We know what happened the last time he said that.
Well, John.
Yeah, a bunch of confidential human sources that were embedded with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers all were involved in all this stuff and never got charged with it. Is that what you're implying is going to happen again? Are there a bunch of feds all around America just salivating, drooling? I can't wait to go out there and insurrect again. They're probably like, yeah, we can't wait for this. They'd like to do it every couple of years. Every 2 years in January would be ideal for them, but okay, March is fine. They're waiting for it. And now they may have their big moment.
The American people have a constitutional right to peaceably assemble.
Absolutely, but to have a former president calling on people to protest a justice proceeding.
The frustration.
This poor guy is really trying to turn this in. Do you think he believes it or not? I don't know. Let's listen.
American people feel about what they sense as a two-tier justice system in this country. I think is well-founded. But
I think these are two people playing patty cake right now.
I believe that people understand that if they give voice to this, if this occurs on Tuesday, that they need to do so peacefully and in a lawful manner. That the violence that occurred on January 6th, the violence that occurred in cities throughout this country in the summer of 2020 was a disgrace.
Okay, I get it.
American people won't tolerate it, and those that engage in that kind of violence should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Okay, so they're on the same team. I just got it. It just clicked. Sorry, I'm a little slow. It's a Sunday. So I was trying to understand what was going on here, because you can tell this guy, he hates Trump, but he also wants Pence to be able to dunk on Trump. And so Pence, they're creating this nice little hole that they can run through where this guy will talk about the horrors of Trump and what a monster he was for January 6th and how on the brink America almost was as a result of all of that. And Pence can agree with him on that, right? As you heard him say in the second half of his statement, he says, well, we do have a right to, he's having it both ways. We have a right to protest. We have a right to freedom of assembly and all of those things. But Trump is also a monster, right? Trump also is a he didn't say that Trump is innocent or anything. He actually brought back all of the imagery of January 6th, and he's spiking the football about January 6th in the same statement that he is saying that we have the right to protest. So this whole interview is an anti-Trump interview. I thought for a minute, it was silly of me to think that Mike Pence may have been defending Donald Trump. It sounded like that at the start of this interview, but that was rookie mistake on my part. It turns out he was just making that statement so that he could grab the January 6th ball and then spike it right down in the aftermath. Let's listen to see if this goes any further.
But you say he's a former president possibly about to be indicted, and it's unprecedented. Aren't his actions unprecedented? I mean, we never saw a presidential candidate.
Yeah, so it's like defending somebody in a nice. It's like, yeah, Donald Trump's a nice. He was a good president, and I stand by our time together. Let's listen.
Give $130,000 to a porn star to keep her from talking. I mean, these are unprecedented actions.
So they can just air their dirty laundry out this whole conversation.
Those events transpired before I even joined the national ticket, and so I can't speak to the merits of the case.
The payoff happened just 2 weeks before the election.
But I can't speak to the merits of the case. Yeah. And in America, you're innocent until proven guilty. That's not always true in the national media, but it is true in our justice system. And look, I know that President Trump can take care of himself, and this process will play out if, in fact, an indictment comes down.
So I want to ask you about your recent remarks about Donald Trump and January 6th. You said that history will hold Donald Trump accountable.
Yeah, there we go.
How?
With an indictment, obviously. He's thrilled as hell he's about to be indicted, I'm sure.
Well, we all face the judgment of history. And I believe in the fullness of time that history will hold Donald Trump accountable.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so that's it from Pence. We don't need to listen to any more of that. So it's very curious. He kind of does this little sneaky thing that I noticed very, very interestingly happen here. Came out defending Trump almost, but then used the opening of the conversation to call him somebody who's going to be judged by history and basically blamed him for all of January 6th. And then used the January 6th imagery in his comment about this new action of protest that Trump is calling for. Very sneaky. That's Mike Pence. All right. Now, all of this is happening, and we're asking ourselves about the timing. Why is this being brought forward now? Why is Trump suddenly, this zombie case that was dead for a long time, about to be indicted? Well, things are looking pretty bad for Joe Biden as well. We know that the House Oversight Committee got their hands on the new SARS reports from Hunter Biden, and we saw some very interesting connections and transferences of money from the Chinese to Hunter and different family members of the Biden family. And Biden got asked about this in one of the weirdest exchanges that we've seen from him. Now, hard to tell what this is about. I don't know if he doesn't actually know about this story, or if he does and he's lying, or if he doesn't know where he is. You know, there's different levels of confusion, and we just are trying to identify which one he's in.
Any reaction to House GOP's memo about your family dealings, sir? Any reaction to House GOP's new memo about your family dealings, sir?
Family dealings.
Yes, your
Family dealings.
revealing that Hunter Biden's business associates sent over $1 million to 3 of your family members. Any reaction to that report?
Not true.
Do you have any reaction to the Russian jet that took down the U.S. drone, Mr. President?
I don't know what he looks totally, deer in the headlights there. Like he's never even heard of anything like this at all. Strange. Okay, so we'll see if there's any further opening there, if the Republicans are going to continue to dig in. If it feels like Trump, there's like a 1-to-1 game here. Trump has classified documents, then Joe Biden has classified documents. Now Trump gets indicted, and then Biden gets indicted, and we're sort of playing this catch-up game. So we'll see where it goes. Now, it's going to be a busy week. We're going to see what the grand jury has to say out of New York, if they do indict him or not. Regardless, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for joining us following the Trump arrest saga. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, closely related, let's tune in to Proud Boys Day 39, because we've got some attention. We missed a whole day. Proud Boys trial day 39. We are catching up on the day's activities. Of course, we know who is on the stand. His name is Capitol Police Officer Mark Carrion. He was in the Plainclothes Division, Civil Disturbance Unit. He is being directly examined by the U.S. government prosecutors. We've got Jason McCullough, Eric Kennerson, Connor Monroe, and I believe Nadia Moore was the prosecutor who was doing the direct exam. We'll check in and see. The defense attorneys are all in the house. We remember that we've got many of them representing the Proud Boys, each of whom you see on your screen. Let's turn our attention to the court docket before we see what else is going on here. Now, back on March 17th, we had a proceeding in court. The jury trial resumed. Everybody was there. And let's take a look at the trial thread and see what happened. Roger Parloff tells us it's March 17th, day 39, Proud Boys trial. I'll be live tweeting here and on Lawfare. The government just began its direct exam of its 21st and last government witness, Capitol Police Officer here in the Capitol building. Now, we're waiting for the judge to get on the bench as we scroll through our friend Roger Parloff's Twitter thread. And boom, we get it. Judge Kelly arrives on the bench. He says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to see you back here. Happy Friday. Grateful to be here. Says, all right, before we call the jury in, we just got 3 things that we want to attend to before we get started. Number 1, we were asking about this limiting instruction. Remember a couple days ago, we were talking about Nordean and Biggs and whether the videos, especially those drunk videos, could be used to show certain things. And here, the Nordean and Biggs videos, those were only going to be used for state of mind. He says, I'll give the limiting instruction to the jurors. And that's that. He's also going to strike some testimony. Yesterday, Officer Mark Carrion, who's still on the stand, made a reference to some radio alerts that he received on January 6th of some bomb threats, who is still not found. That random Fed bomber, whoever that was. Don't know who that is. And number 3, the judge says, and so I'm going to redact that. We're going to delete the reference to the bombs. I don't want the jurors to get distracted. And he says, lastly, I'm going to continue to look at these messages. Apparently, he's doing what's called an in-camera review, which means he's looking at stuff in his courtroom. an in-camera review of the messages that were deleted from the spreadsheet. If you remember, FBI agent Nicole Miller testified. After she was done testifying, she was supposed to disclose her Jenks material over to the defense. And in that Jenks material, it was an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of rows that were deleted, or let's say hidden, thousands of rows. So the DOJ sent that spreadsheet back over to the judge, and they said, all right, we don't know what's in these rows, but why don't you take a look at them and you'll let us know what to do about all this data. So the judge says, all right, I'm going to continue to look at the spreadsheets. The original one that was provided to the defense that allegedly had the, quote, classified or sensitive info. You remember all that? The FBI just made up a whole new category, and they said, we can't give this stuff back over to you, defense, because it's sensitive info. So Roger says, now they're discussing a witness that Nick Smith, one of the attorneys, might call as a defense witness as early as Monday, coming up tomorrow. Says that this witness is going to be a Proud Boys videographer. His name will be Eddie Block. He's in a wheelchair, and he wants to bring a service dog. Prosecutor says, oh, that's no problem. The government is pro-dog, and I think we can accommodate him. And I think that might be what this recent filing was. Yeah. So here it looks like response by the United States. Looks like, are they going to let the dog come in? That'd be nice if they did. Here, let's see if we can just see this dog motion real fast. See if they'll pretend like they're nice people. We'll open this one up here. Let's see what the government says. Hopefully they don't say execute his dog. Oh, maybe they'll charge his dog too. Maybe he should be indicted for being man's best friend during a Proud Boy insurrection. Here's what they say. This is the government's response to a motion permitting a witness to testify by a service dog. The government says, Eric, he writes, on March 15th, Nordean filed a motion to permit Eddie Block to testify, accompanied by his St. Bernard, who's a real good boy, which he asserts is a service and therapy dog. Oh, the government hereby notifies the court it takes no position, losers, on the defendant's motion. Accordingly, the government defers to the court. What a bunch of jerks. Can't you just say no objection? Gosh. All right, look, there's an objection, then there is no objection, and then there's no position. They took no position. Apparently they hate dogs. Typical government prosecutors. Not even surprised. All right, so let's go back over. So apparently no position, and the judge will decide that tomorrow. Roger Parloff says it says the judge is going to consider accommodating him. Now bringing in the jury. Judge brings him in. We set him down. All right. Now, the witness on the stand is Mark Carrion, U.S. Capitol Police officer. He was in the CDU, the Civil Disturbance Unit. And on this day, on January 6th, he was a part of the soft squad, so no riot gear. He was stationed on the east side of the Capitol. So the jury is back. They're all seated in. The judge says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, couple items to housekeeping things to go over here. The videos that you heard yesterday, the statements on the podcasts, those are evidence about their state of mind. State of mind. We're not asking you to look at the content of the video to determine what they did in the video. We're just asking about their state of mind. That's the only thing it's useful for. They say, okay, we understand. And they probably don't have any idea what he's talking about. They say, we're also going to strike the testimony about the bomb alerts. They say, okay, that makes sense. And they don't know what that means either. Okay. So it goes on, and they're now bringing out Officer Mark Carrion. Prosecutor, we recall Mark Carrion to the stand. Officer, you're reminded you're under oath. You understand? Yes, I do. So Nadia Moore is going to be resuming the direct exam. And Nadia Moore is this prosecutor here who we found on LinkedIn. And here's what she says. All right, officer. We left off testimony talking about the bike racks. Do you remember that? Yeah. After the bike racks were breached near that Senate egg, and that egg is that little corridor. It sort of looks like an egg on the map. There were those of us, he says, what happened next? He says, well, after all of that, those of us on the southeast side, we started running toward the memorial door. We posted up in front of it. It's on the ground level, and we thought that they would rush that door. So we protected it. Well, how long were you there? He said, well, about 2 to 3 minutes. And then we saw a crowd not noticing the memorial door, sort of south of the Columbus doors, but it was over at the ground level. And then they were running up the steps toward this other door. And so we ran in that direction. It's okay. And you're showing us all this on the map. Perfect. Says, okay, now can you tell us where these officers were going? And so Carrion is now pointing out the line of police officers trying to stop the protesters from going up the steps. So he says, yeah, they're right here. Protesters are running up this way. We're running down that way. And we were there to try to stop them. What happened next? She says. Well, after they created the line, the officers, then the crowd broke through them and started running up the staircase. And we could see officers having issues. And so we made our way up the left side. And what happened next? Well, there was a race, like a rush right up to the door. About what time was that, officer? Actually, no, sorry. That's Carmen Hernandez. So a defense attorney races in there. All right, I got to back up on this. So she's in the so the prosecutor's in the middle of her direct exam. Okay. And he's explaining. We made our way up the left side. There was just a rush up the door. And the defense chimes in from across the room and shouts, can we have a time? Like, what time are you talking about? What time? It's not her time to ask questions. So the judge says, it's the government's presentation, Carmen. You may proceed. Now we're seeing more video of the rioters on the steps pushing in a heave, right? We saw the many videos of this. What's happening here, officer? Well, they're pushing. Obviously, they're trying to get through. And what happened to the police line? He says, well, at that point, the police line was overrun. Objection, relevance, says Carmen. Judge says, sorry, Carmen, overruled. You may go on. So he says, yeah, so there's more video here. They're playing all the video. You know, they want to just play this thing on loop as much as they possibly can because it's really useful for them. It doesn't look good, so they just over and over and over. More video panning across the street showing rioters overrunning it, rioters surrounding, climbing on police vehicles, and so on. Carrion says, yeah, and we were also standing outside of the Columbus doors. There's sort of wooden doors in the area. And we also refer to those doors as the exterior rotunda doors. It leads obviously directly to the rotunda. That's why we call them the exterior rotunda doors. Geniuses there. I was behind one of the columns, he said. I could hear the alarm, meaning the door was open and unsecure. It was just beeping, beeping, beeping. And so we formed a tactical position. I called all my officer friends and we call it a wedge. And so we tried to push as many people back to create a space. Is that what that looked like right here, officer? Yeah. So they paused the video and he says, yeah, right here. See, that's me and those are my officers and we're all standing on the line. And what happened next? And he said, well, our radio was going crazy. So we had the West Side officers calling. Everybody was calling for help. Objection. Overruled. Go on. He says also the crowd was yelling and they were chanting. I mean, our senses were overwhelmed at that point. Carmen, defense attorney, says, Judge, look, can we have a sidebar, please? Picks up the phone, sidebar. They're talking. Carmen Hernandez is very upset about this. And remember, she's representing Zachary Real. So let's take a look at this defense attorney who is the subject of some discussion here. Carmen Hernandez for Zachary Real. Parloff continues. Prosecutor says, well, what was the crowd doing next? Capitol Police. Well, they were pushing back against us. They were also being pushed into us because more and more people were coming up the stairs. So there was kind of this heave-ho action. I want to play this next part of the video for you. What's happening here? Now there's violent fighting at the Columbus door. Rioters are spraying the police. He says. Carmen says, objection, I move to strike. Judge says, nope, overruled. That can come in. So he's making characterizations, right? Rioters are spraying at the police, and she doesn't like that. Objection, that mischaracterized. You know, he's not qualified to say what that was or whatever. And objection, overruled. Judge says, you're fine. Go right ahead. So he goes, well, there were 5 or 6 of us left at the door. We were being sprayed. We had OC spray and mace. They were hitting us with flagpoles. They were hitting us with batteries and frozen water bottles. Oh, it was maybe that frozen water bottle. That was the one in the indictment, frozen, in hopes of getting us out of there. Crowd grab. They probably saw my video making fun of their water bottle indictment. Glad that testimony got fixed. In hopes of getting us out there, the crowd grabbed the riot shield from the officers. Objection! Carmen Hernandez is still sitting there. It mischaracterizes. That's not evidence. He wasn't there. He's speculated. Objection. Probably overruled again. Now, Carrion says, all right, now we're looking at the Columbus exterior door and the landing area from the south side. Two other defense attorneys now, Stephen Metcalf and Dan Hull, chime in, and they say, we have continuing objections. Stephen Metcalf is down here representing Dominic Pizzola, so they're objecting to this entire line of inquiry. And J. Daniel Hull, we've not actually heard much from. He's a Washington, D.C. litigator representing Joseph Biggs. He's also there objecting. So we've got many objections. We have a continuing objection as to relevance. Don't know why he's talking about all of this. He's talking about people who presumably are not even the Proud Boys themselves, right? The crowd grabbed the riot shield. Did the okay? Were the Proud Boys in the crowd? Like, did one of the 5 people who's being charged with a crime? Did they do it? No. Then what else are we talking about here? Did they hit you with the flagpole? Which one of them hit you with a water bottle? Like, why are you talking about this horrific thing in order to make this look bad for these co-defendants? Because they're not responsible for these things unless you're alleging they are. Maybe you are. Now, we have to see. Carrion says, we saw 3 of our officers leave, 2 of which got sprayed in the eyes, directly in the eyes, which is a very dangerous situation for them. Pattis objects. Judge, he's not qualified to determine whether that's dangerous or not. He's just a regular police officer. That's Norm Pattis, probably an objection like that. He comes back and says, overruled. You're allowed to talk about whatever you want here. This is my courtroom. Government gets full reign. Continue on, good sir. Hero of America. Please continue, says the judge. He says, our lieutenant and our sergeant also got sprayed in the eyes. People pushing against them and they can't see. We had one of our officers escort them out because it's dangerous for them when they say they can't open their eyes. He says, so it's only me and my officer, Salke, were the last 2 left. We had individuals trying to grab our hands, our arms to release the door. Officer Salke grabbed the flagpole from a rioter, broke it in half, placed it through the door handles. We grabbed flagpoles to prevent doors from opening. Through the windows in the East Rotunda, I saw the yellow "Don't Tread on Me" flag. That's when I knew the Capitol had been breached and people were inside. They play some more footage on loop. Around and around we go. At this point, the interior door had been breached. The flagpole was snapped in half and the doors were coming open, and we were eventually overrun. What happened next, officer? He says, the crowd started pouring in. I was on the left side and beside the door, still trying to close it to minimize the amount of people coming in. Officer Salke was in the middle, trying to restrict people. Now they're playing CCTV footage. Broken windows, furniture misplaced. Hernandez objects again. Your Honor, totally irrelevant to our client's behavior or conduct. Sidebar. She makes her argument. The judge probably tells her to shut up again. Says, carry on, sir. So he does. Officer continues. I was toward the right side of the door as we see it. Now we see the rioters surrounding the doors, and there are a few officers, but they're all outnumbered. We see rioters inside. Now, Officer Moore says, Prosecutor Moore says, officer, is this you? Circles this one. Yeah, that's me. And is this Officer Salke? Yes, that's me too. What are you guys trying to do in this scene right here when on this video? What are you trying to do right now? Well, we're trying to restrict flow. Objection. Objection overruled. Carry on, sir. We're clearly outnumbered and overrun, he says. We're trying to put our bodies in the way to minimize the amount of people coming in. Video plays forward, the alarm still blaring. Now the crowd is chanting treason. Once in a while, we would close the door, he says, but the hinge on the door broke. So we weren't able to secure anything. The only way to secure was to push people out. So we closed the Columbus doors. Then we took the iron benches and threw it into the set of doors. Why'd you do that? Well, we didn't want the doors to swing open again. And so we took a moment and we walked into the Capitol and saw nothing but officers exhausted, using water bottles to hose off spray. What time did you leave the Capitol? About 11 o'clock that night. Objection overruled. Can we be heard on that, Judge? No, you can't. Sit down. Stop objecting. Look at this. Objection. Oh my God. I don't even know what it's like to be in this courtroom right now. It's just crazy. Hernandez, objection. Overruled. Can we be heard? No. Hernandez says, well, I object again. Overruled again. Somebody else objects, another defense attorney, and you're overruled again. So the prosecutor says, Judge, can I be heard? And he says, of course. What can I help you with? Sidebar. Sidebar. They just go and have a conversation. He's like, I love you guys. What's up over there? Sure. I'd love that for lunch. Yeah. Get me the big one. No, I'll pay. You guys are doing great. I'll pay for it. Don't even worry about it. Defense is over here with their hands up. Put your hand down, Carmen. So they get off the phone, and now more is done. Prosecutor is done. So our final officer, we ask ourselves about cross-examination. Are there going to be any? We ask Nick Smith if he's going to chime in for Nordean, and it looks like the answer on that one is no, he is not. And what the heck did I just do? I think I just screwed up my Twitter or my I don't know what the heck I just did to my browser. This is a weird quirk of a thing. All right, well, we're going to finish the thread and then we'll figure it out. He says, so Smith, no cross-examination. Dan Hull for Biggs, he starts a cross-examination. He says, officer, what time did you get to the Capitol? He said, about 8:30 in the morning. And where were you at that time? He says, well, I was on the west side of the Capitol, on the east side. He saw a pro-Trump crowd as soon as he started to arrive on the Senate egg. And you saw another pro-Trump crowd come around the west side, past the north side. What time was that approximately when you saw that crowd come around? Oh, I couldn't tell you exactly. So you were there at 8:30 a.m. and then another crowd came around at what time? Couldn't tell you. Before noon? Don't know. Were the bike racks shaken loose at that time? He said, well, on the Senate egg, there were 3 instances where we'd see people shake the bike racks, like kick them down. He says, in my opinion, they were just testing our response. Well, what time were the bike racks shaken, officer? The 3 instances where we saw those were in the morning. Well, when was the first time? Sometime after 8:30. The second time? Don't remember. How about the third time? Well, he said sometime before the full-on breach. I don't know. Well, when was the full-on breach? And Carmen objects to that question. So Carmen is objecting to another defense attorney's question because it hurts her client. You see this? Overruled again. When was the first time bike racks were actually pushed down? Nordean objects. Sustained. Okay, and remember, this is Hull speaking. So what I wanted to show you was this is Hull, who is representing Joseph Biggs, cross-examining a Capitol Hill police officer who is the government's witness being objected to by other co-defendant attorneys, right? Because they're getting questions out that are good for Joseph Biggs, but bad for everybody else. So these co-defendants are also in a tricky spot. Because not only are they against the government, but they're also against everybody else. Let's go back to the thread. When that objection was sustained, when did the rushing of the Columbus doors open, officer? He says, well, all of that was within about 10 minutes of the breach. And when were the doors actually breached? He says, well, in the videos, I think it was around 2:38 to about 2:40, around that time. And so we've got pictures of you here on the screen here. It looks like you and sulky officers are near the doors when they're closed, right? Yeah. About what time was that? He says, probably after 2 p.m. Thank you. No further questions. So now we have another defendant come in. So cross-examination is from now Carmen Hernandez on behalf of Zachary Real. She stands up and begins her cross. Hello, officer. Hi. First of all, I want to thank you for your service. He says, you're welcome. Now, your testimony was about Columbus doors. Is that right? He says, mostly. She says, no further questions. Oh, she's hilarious, man. So your testimony was about the Columbus doors. Basically is right. That's too funny. It's exactly what we were saying, right? He's talking about all of this other stuff, but he wasn't specifying anything that these guys did in particular. All the violence and all the water bottles. Did he say that we heard that any one of these guys threw it? Not that I know. So she says, so you're here on behalf of the doors, I guess? The doors, the hinges were coming off the doors. All right. No further questions for you. All right. Roger Roots now comes in, and Roger Roots, we're going to read a motion from him in a minute. This is Roger Roots representing Dominic Pizzola. He says, did you see my client Pizzola in anything of this ordeal you just shared with us about the doors? He says, no, not that I recall. Okay, but you saw hundreds of protesters, right? Yeah, I did. Thousands of protesters, maybe? He says, yeah, that was about the total for the day. Yeah, that sounds about right. Officer, when you were there, I mean, you saw misconduct, right? Yeah. You saw people doing bad things, didn't you? Yeah. You saw people spraying mace all over the place, didn't you? Yeah. And people pushing each other, yes. And violent, right? Yes. Many people were behaving peacefully, though, weren't they? Yeah. He says, did you detect that the crowd on the east side was being controlled by or guided by the people on the west side? Two sides of the building being coordinated? He says, well, the only thing I can speak to that is later on, sort of after the door was breached, we found radios, we found walkie-talkies, and we could hear communications happening between the both sides. That's interesting. Wonder what that's about. After doors were breached, we found radios and could hear communications happening. Did you hear anything that you can recall from those radios? Hernandez, objection. Overruled. No, I didn't hear anything. Now, officer, the crowd, would you say that it was mostly peaceful? He says, yeah, and actually it was until the breach, and then it turned into this mob mentality. Did you hear anybody throughout this entire day express anything friendly to you? You heard a lot of yelling and violence, but did you hear any friendly remarks? He says, well, we heard people behind us when we were holding the door saying, we got you, brother. Not going to let anything happen to you. That's nice of them. Now, he says, we thought that we had law enforcement and prior military in the crowd as well. We thought we had law enforcement and prior military in the crowd as well. Don't know if he means law enforcement who was there as law enforcement or law enforcement who were there as protesters, right? Protesters who also happen to be law enforcement. Don't know. The defense says, did it seem like the crowd on the east side had any kind of organized strategy? He said, yeah, in my opinion, yeah, actually, we had two individuals. Nordean says, objection, sustained. Did it look like, calls for speculation. Did it look like anyone was commanding? Yeah, so I think those are, he says, mix those up. Objection, sustained. He says, well, I can't recall. Were you punched or were you hit? He says, well, I can't recall if I was punched or hit because of adrenaline. And I was wearing 3 layers of clothing as well. So I don't even know if I got hit at all. which is by my clients. Any assault by my clients? Did you ever see my clients? No. I don't know what his clients are, even how they're implicated at all. Roots says, okay, we're done. No further questions. My client hasn't even been brought up here at all. Apparently, Tario's lawyers don't even have any questions. So Tario's people just say, no, we're done. No questions from us. So the witness just didn't even implicate them. So they don't have any questions for them. No redirect exam. So the government's done as well. Sidebar. They're talking. Looks like the government's case in chief might be over. The judge says, all right, I guess nobody has any questions and the government has no redirect. So I guess we're done here. Judge says, all right, well, we're going to send the jury home until Monday, 9 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, please avoid any media coverage and don't conduct independent investigations and don't discuss the evidence. Have a great weekend. Attorneys stick around. Now, Carmen Hernandez, defense attorney extraordinaire for Zachary Real, she's chiming in. She's upset. She had her hand up all this week and she's not been called on a lot. And she moves to strike the testimony of this officer. She says, Judge, this is insane. He came out here. He didn't talk about any one of our clients. Nobody even wanted to cross-examine him. He's talking about doors falling off the hinges, saying, I've been hit in the head with all this stuff, but nothing directly connecting to our clients. This is just like somebody coming in here and talking about a really bad thing. And then the jurors hear this person talking about a really bad thing and they imply that it's your client's fault. That's nuts. We talk about the rule 403, where if it's more prejudicial than it is probative. This is a great example. What testimony did we get from this officer that was useful in establishing the mental state or the physical conduct of any one of these 5 Proud Boys? None. She says there wasn't any of it here, Judge. And so she says all of it has to go. It was never linked to any of the defendants in this case. He was talking about the insurrection broadly, but they're not responsible for the insurrection broadly. They're responsible for their specific conduct. Government prosecutor Moore, she turns around and she says, Judge, that's not true at all. Are you kidding me? She says, in our exhibits, we've previously provided identification for Biggs and Fisher and Johnson and Hafner and Lorkey. And we've got all sorts of IDs and it's all relevant and it should be admitted because their conduct was, in close proximity to everybody else's conduct and they were, whatever. And the judge says, good arguments here. Let me think about this for a minute. Says, well, Miss Carmen, I am inclined to deny your motion, but I will think about it over the weekend, which is interesting. It's not an outright denial. That means there's hope for Carmen. Holy moly. I mean, he basically put her in the timeout chair this entire trial. She's been sitting back there in the corner, squirming in her seat. And this judge won't even listen to her. Says, no, I don't even want to hear your rationale for your objection. Just automatically no. It's like that scene from Austin Powers. Zip, zip, whenever he was doing whatever that scene was. Now, we'll wait until Monday for the government to rest in case they need to come up with anything else over the weekend. The judge says, how do you want to proceed? All right, Tuesday is going to be a half day for the jury, so it'll be a light day for us due to a juror's problem. But he says, my inclination is to just recess now, and we'll be back on Monday. Defense attorney for Nordean says, well, look, we can break now, but I still want a ruling. We've got a pending motion to quash. Apparently, there's a motion under seal that we have not seen yet relating to a trial subpoena. Judge says, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I'll try to get to that over the weekend as well. And okay, well, that's what we've got on my docket. I'll take a look. It's Friday, everybody. Have a great trip back home. We are recessed. We'll be back Monday, 9 a.m. Hope to see you then. So that is the end of trial day 39. Once again, courtesy of our friend Roger Parloff. Excellent follow, doing great work. Senior editor over at Lawfare. We're grateful to his work doing these live tweets threads so that we can dig into them. So that was it. Short trial day. We can see we're done with testimony for the government. That means next week it's going to be the defense case. And it's been 39 days of the government's case. The defense case is going to start tomorrow, presumably. And of course, we will cover it. But let's take a look at what is going on in the case, because there were 2 additional motions that are interesting The government is replying. No, remember, let's go through these two items here in the case. Remember that there was a motion to dismiss that was filed by the defense. They said that after the Tucker videos came out, after we heard about all of those missing spreadsheet rows, after we learned that the government was snooping on attorney-client emails and so on, we wanted a dismissal of the charge due to the egregious misconduct. So this motion was filed by the defense, by Ethan Nordean. No, this one was filed by Dominic Pezzola. And Dominic Pezzola was asking for a motion to dismiss. The government replied to the motion, and this is Pezzola's final reply. So it goes, you file the motion, then there's a response, and then you reply to the response. I think I said that wrong the first time. This is the final motion, the final reply. The moving side gets to go first, and they get the final word. So this is what that looks like, they say. From Dominic Pezzola, this is defendant Pezzola's reply to the government's opposition to the motion to dismiss. First, they write, the government claims that there are no Brady violations associated with the revelations that Tucker Carlson exposed that do not withstand scrutiny. The televised program, they write, was in receipt of tens of thousands of hours of footage from J6, which was previously withheld. The footage reportedly came from the House of Representatives. Although every defense lawyer in every J6 case attests that they have not seen all of this evidence, the government claims that all the footage was provided to our clients. Pezzola submits that although his counselors have viewed many hundreds of hours of discovery, they were unfamiliar with the Tucker Carlson footage relating to Jacob Chansley. All the footage of Chansley that aired on Tucker had been produced to the defendants, says the government. But they say they never saw it. Now, Pezzola, they write, has been deprived of the footage in question. The footage in question is exculpatory. It would show his innocence in that it refutes or rebuts and debunks the arguments of the government that J6 demonstrators forcefully battled their way through the Capitol. An evidentiary hearing is required to determine the extent of these violations. He says, among the trilobytes of discovery, is that a formal unit of measurement for data? Trilobytes of data. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Of discovery provided by the government are drop-down internal communications between FBI special agent and other agents. From the context, he says, it is clear the message contains messages pertaining to the Proud Boys. This is where he's talking about all of those Excel spreadsheet rows that were hidden. FBI agent Nicole, she testified. They say, well, oh, you talked about text messages in your internal Slack system. We'd like to see those. She said, no problem. I'll do an export. I'll send you what you need. She sent an export. It contained thousands of rows of deleted stuff. They looked in the deleted rows. They said, uh-oh, that looks like it relates to our clients, the Proud Boys. And then the FBI said, wait a minute, you weren't supposed to see that. That was all classified or designated FBI sensitive material, which they just made up out of nowhere. And the judge said, that sounds great. That means that we don't have to look at any of this stuff. And I don't have to tell the jurors about you telling your boss to delete 375 or 378 bits of evidence and so on and so forth. So the defense continues. They say, Judge, from those rows, it is clear that the FBI agents are comfortable talking to each other about violating the most basic rights of the defendants and the most fundamental rules of evidence gathering. Yeah, and they talk like, I think, I don't know, probably, high school kids talk on their Slack channels, I guess. Strange behavior. They're using weird vernacular. They're FBI agents, so yeah, you can get the point of it. But the agents speak of altering an official report, of destroying hundreds of pieces of evidence. The government disputes the nefarious conclusion. But this is what they said. In quotes, in the report, you need to go into that CHS report, that confidential human source report, and edit out that I was present, which was in the hidden messages. The United States claims that a message by a high-ranking FBI official directing FBI Nicole to go into the report and put in and edit out that I was present was part of a harmless review. They say, like other reports, these are reviewed for accuracy, and it was just inaccurate, and we just needed to make a change. That's all. They say, according to the government, this was their excuse. They say that message referred to an email sent by the CHS, who is an online researcher and not a member of the Proud Boys. The agent who sent it had recently transitioned to a supervisor role and was no longer the handler of the source. He also had not realized he was still copied on the emails. The supervisory agent made the request to edit out his name because he believed he was not copied and thus not present for the purpose of the contact. And because per FBI policy, he cannot approve the write-up of a source meeting he was involved in. After Agent Miller told the supervisory agent that he was in fact copied on the email, he withdrew his request to not be listed. A different supervisor approved the report, and the online source was instructed not to CC the other agent in future emails. Oh, that's all. In short, the exchange concerns a routine clerical matter and does not suggest any wrongdoing on behalf of the FBI, which never makes any mistakes ever. Counsel for Pizzola, they say this is ridiculous. They say this tortured proffer is nonsense. It simply does not explain the wording of the message. Here's what the message said. It said, you need to go into that CHS report and edit out that I was present. That's what it said. One can think of 100 different ways for a superior to command an inferior to engage in a routine clerical matter as described. Yeah. This is a lot. This is like 5 or 6 people involved in this, right? Not the source meeting, email from an online source withdrew his request, a different supervisor approved the report. Then the online source was instructed not to seize. It's like a bunch of stuff happened here. But that's not what they said. This was one Slack message, link message. Go in there, edit the report. Note that the message used the word present, right? Not CC'd on the report, not listed, not copied. The government's explanation doesn't name the names or provide the necessary details to support their explanation. Just take our word for it. Who were those other supervisors? Are those other emails popped up? Is there a reply in there saying that don't copy us in the future? Can you produce that email and make that proffer present to the court or not? Or we should just take your word for it? So Pizzola is entitled to see the documents in question, they say, without any redactions or with redactions if you need to. And we want to subpoena everybody else who was involved. There was another couple messages that were in those deleted or hidden rows, one of which was, my boss just ordered me to destroy 333 pieces of evidence. That's a little unusual in a quick message. OMG, that's insane, like high school girls. At the FBI. Now, next, they say the government desperately seeks to cover up an obvious, potentially earth-shattering corruption scandal by merely proffering that a text message saying, my boss ordered me to delete and destroy 338 pieces of evidence. I don't know what it is, 334 or 338. But if it's 338 pieces of evidence with an exclamation point, they say that that was not harmless, innocent, or legal. But if there was anything routine, innocuous, or mundane about such a message, the characteristics are belied by Agent Miller's shocked response. She said, OMG, that's insane. They said it's just routine. Why is it insane, exclamation point, to destroy 338 pieces of evidence if it's so harmless, innocent, and legal? Now, even under a perspective extravagantly favoring the government, this exchange cries out for an investigation by the court. Yet the United States responds by misframing the issue as one of the other agents' destruction of unrelated evidence. The government continues, they say, as the court knows, disposal of evidence is a routine part of the life cycle of every criminal case, and the process occurs through the manual. And they reference the manual and they say we did everything fine. But they're referencing this manual. It says here, the destruction of evidence in this case was about 338 items of evidence from a 20-year-old multi-co-defendant trial. Now, the defense says that's very convenient, that they just conveniently delete evidence and it happened to show up and it's just a routine matter. As Roots stated in court on Monday, he said that the government's proffer doesn't pass the smell test. Says it's difficult to imagine an FBI agent saying, quote, my boss just ordered me to destroy 334 pieces of evidence. If the agent meant to say, my boss just ordered me to follow the Bureau's procedure for disposing of evidence in closed criminal cases related to a multi-year co-defendant case, right? It's a little bit different of a tone. My boss just ordered me to destroy this stuff. OMG. A little bit different than, hey, can you close out the Smith-Johnson case? The evidence needs to be put through the closeout procedure. Yeah, take a look at the manual, follow the instructions there. That person says, is that an, oh my gosh, is that type of a response? Or is it a response like, ugh, I got to go delete all this, destroy all this stuff? The government offers no hint of the identity of the boss who made that order. Don't know. The names of the co-defendant case should be public record now, right? It's very old. Can we see what case it was? And follow up to make sure the evidence was destroyed? Or 3, how about the names of the defendant's family who supposedly received some of that evidence back? Can we verify any of that? No. Indeed, the proffer contradicts the original message in material ways. The original message indicates that a high-ranking FBI officer had a lower-ranking officer destroy 338 pieces of evidence. But the proffer filed by the government says it's just routine. And why would Special Agent FBI Nicole respond with, OMG, that's insane! Exclamation point, to a statement about disposing evidence of a 20-year-old case? Seems unlikely. Conclusion. Roger Root says, Pizzola prays for an evidentiary hearing into these matters, the witness subpoena to testify under oath, and additionally requests a mistrial and a dismissal. So that'll be the final word on this, and then this will go back over to the judge who will issue a ruling on that sooner rather than later. My guess is going to be that it's not going to be dismissed because that's sort of been the pattern on this trial. I don't even think we'll get an evidentiary hearing on it, but we do have some updates on how this trial will proceed because the judge issued a new order filed on March 16th. This is the latest update as to the rules for the next half of this trial. Now, they say, upon consideration of the government's request for additional procedures, you remember last week we read the government wanted all of these rules. They wanted the defense to notify us about who's coming up next and who your witnesses are and where your exhibits are, and all this stuff. And the defense said, we don't know. We fly by the seat of our pants, some of them. And they said, we think this is the more appropriate way to structure this. A lot less rules, a lot more fluid, organic. And they were proposing sets of rules for how the defense is going to be calling their witness and how they're going to be presenting their case. So the judge just decided this. Says, it is hereby ordered, and the motion is granted, ordering the following be done. First, the defense shall present their case in the order set forth in the indictment. So you remember the order of the indictment is exactly how I have them listed here. Okay, so I have each co-defendant. The first co-defendant is Ethan, second is Biggs, third is Real, fourth is Enrique, fifth is Dominic. So they'll go in that order, is what the judge is telling us. Says, however, if more than one defendant intends to call a witness in his case in chief, he may do so out of order. If more than one defendant intends to call the same person, may call them out of order. So like if co-defendant 1 and co-defendant 5 want to talk to the same witness, co-defendant 5 may be able to jump in on that first witness's testimony. And we may be spending another, week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks. We don't know how far this will go. Says, each Friday before and during the trial, defendants shall provide to the government an order of call of witnesses for the following week. Defendants must also provide a list of witnesses they anticipate on calling on a particular trial day, no less than 36 hours in advance, if not earlier. Counsel will not be absolutely bound by these witness lists or order of call, and if in good faith they need to change the order, or if necessary to call a witness out of turn. Now, any defendant calling a witness shall provide the Jenks materials, which we learned all about, I think 2 weeks ago, and the exhibits it intends to use during the witness testimony no later than 36 hours before he intends to call the witness. any objections to the exhibits that cannot be resolved. So exhibits versus, okay, here. The government shall designate any Rule 106 materials. These are all discovery types of things. Cross-examination of the defense witness by co-defendants shall be restricted to that testimony that is adverse to the co-defendant. Okay, that's interesting. So just like we heard today, if one defendant presents one witness, they don't get to ask him about all of his all of his direct testimony if they're cross-examining somebody. Only the part of the testimony that implicates their client. But I think a lot of these witnesses are going to be good for all of them. We'll see. We'll have to see. We don't know. Now, the court, in other words, we don't know if the Proud Boys are going to turn amongst themselves and they're all going to start pointing fingers at each other. We're starting to see some of that right now. But whether they do that in their case in chief, we'll see. The court shall inquire of the defense at the conclusion of the witness whether any co-defendant wishes to cross-examine the witness, and if so, demonstrate the nature of the adversity. Yeah, so for example, you could bring in Enrique Tarrio could call a witness that's very helpful to him and maybe 3 other guys, but bad for Dominic Pizzola. And then Dominic Pizzola might want to cross-examine that witness, or all the witnesses might be great for all of them. We don't know. So looks like that is the final part of the order. So ordered March 16th, 2023 by Judge Kelly. And so we'll be back in court tomorrow with the full trial proceedings. We see the service dog hopefully will be allowed to join. I mean, these prosecutors are just such killjoys. We'll see. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. We covered some good ground today. Proud Boys trial, day 39. We are now caught up. We'll start day 40 Monday, tomorrow, with the defense case in chief, full steam ahead. We also talked a lot about Donald Trump and the arrest and the indictment. We'll see if they get their last witness presented in front of the grand jury tomorrow. If so, if there is an indictment that gets handed down tomorrow, maybe there is an arrest on Tuesday, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be later in the week. But we will continue to cover. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. But all right, my friends, I want to invite you to come and join us for our watchingthewatchers.locals.com after party. We're going to jump into your questions and your comments right after we remind ourselves about how important it is to be healthy and green, courtesy of our friends over at fieldofgreens.com. And my friends, I want to tell you that it is a time for us to decide to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds. And we're all sick of the fad diets and the weight loss pills and all of those things. We've all been there. We've all done that. We know they don't work, but you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that and the weight would probably fall right off. But look, vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, who's got time to prepare that every day? Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you won't find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. You're going to look healthier, feel healthier, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert to save at checkout. The vegetables want to be eaten. You're going to be feeling amazing, bursting with green energy, the good kind of green energy, out of your hair follicles, maybe. I don't know. That's not FDA approved statement. However, it is great stuff. Fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert at checkout. And all right, my friends, now let's say hello to you in the chat and to see what you all have to say about this. Man, it's been a busy weekend. Holy moly. We had a lot more news than ordinary. And let's see what you have to say about it. We had a couple come in the house. Our first one was from Chris. What's up, Chris? Says, thanks for keeping us updated. I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you back, Chris. Thanks for the super chat here today. Zulu says, Rob, on a scale of 1 to J6, how helpful for Trump's defense do you figure it is for people to threaten civil war online? Well, it's a good question, Zulu. I don't know. I guess if the current DOJ is in charge, arguing for civil war is not good. They're going to be the one, if the Proud Boys situation is any indicator, there are feds all over the place, and they're salivating, wanting people to get caught up in violence. I think I like the idea, not necessarily of a civil war. I mean, I think that people are talking about a civil divorce, but I like the idea of more of an exit from a broken system into a new system. I think you're kind of being jokey here, but it's kind of a serious question. And it's a good one because I think, Vivek was talking about that today. Civil war, I don't want to be in a civil war. Nobody wants to be in a civil war, but we also don't want to live in a broken society where there is one segment of society that feels like it's on the receiving end of a civil war. When you're being locked in your homes, when your job is being threatened, when you're forced to mandate this, that, or the other, and now the justice system doesn't work, and now your free speech is being taken away, and now all of these things are, your monetary supply is being wrecked. There's a good portion of this country that feels like they are already under the oppression of a warring entity. So I don't want a civil war. I don't want violence. I don't want anything like that. I would rather have a functional democracy and a republic that works, that adheres to the ideals of liberty, like our Constitution in contemplated a long time ago. But that's not the country that we're living in. So, I don't think it's useful to say, like, we're going to go to war with the Biden administration or something. Like, I don't think that's going to go well, because they're just going to weaponize the whole government back against anybody who says that. We're already watching it happen, literally in real time. MAGA ultra extremists. So, I think for a big part of this, there's one part of the country that feels like they are in total control. There's another part of the country that's literally been under the thumb of the feds for the last 3+ years, and we're all pretty much sick of it. So it's a tough one to dissect. But thank you, Zulu, for it. And I know what you're at. On a scale of 1 to J6, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. On a scale of 1 to J6, I never thought that J6 was at the upper end of the scale. I think that's pretty minor. Joe Biden would say it's like 1 to, I think Joe Biden would say it's 1 to Pearl Harbor. It goes 1's at the bottom, then it goes Pearl Harbor, then maybe 9/11, then J6, right? Like, that's how psycho Joe Biden is. He's nuts. So J6 is like, I don't know, Hiroshima or something, according to them. But in other words, I disagree with your scale, Zulu. Here, Mayor of Baseville says, why hasn't Trump contributed a single penny to the legal defense of the J6 protesters as they rot in jail? I don't know if that's true or not, Mayor of Baseville. I don't know if he's contributed anything, or what the amount of money he's contributed. I don't know what the official numbers are, but I agree with your general tone on this. I don't like how the J6ers have been abandoned by basically everybody. Almost nobody talks about them at all. And even Mike Pence and other people that we just heard from today, they're still moving forward with this giant myth that it was borderline insurrection, and he's going to be judged by history and all this stuff. I'm not happy with what happened on January 6th, but I do not think it was without a lot of involvement of our government. And I've said that before, if they're either incompetent or they're in on it, they're complicit, because they had informants embedded with the Proud Boys. I would guess it was a 1-to-1 ratio of a certain Proud Boys group, that almost every single one of them was like a one, at least in this case. I would guarantee you there's at least one CHS, if not two, for every one of these individuals prosecuted in this case. I'd put a bet on that, actually. If the government would say, hey, we'll give you our full list of CHSs that were in this Proud Boys circle, I bet it's 2-to-1. I'd be curious to see what those numbers look like. But anyways, Mayor of Baseville, I feel like the Republicans and Trump have wanted to move on by this. Trump could have pardoned all of them. They could have been pounding the table about this a long time ago, and they're just not. It's been very disappointing. Good to see you, and thank you for the dono, Mayor of Baseville. Gloria is here, says, Rob, can DeSantis stop extradition of DJT to New York? Yeah, I think he could put up a stink about that, certainly. If they wanted to come in and execute the warrant in his state, I think he could probably stop that because we have you have the full faith and credit of the Constitution, and you have these interstate compacts, and you typically will honor those. But remember, we've talked about this, about extradition a couple times. We've talked about that, I think, in the Rittenhouse case, and there was a big fight over whether he was going to be extradited or not. I think that, Ron could step in there and muck up the gears. I think for Donald Trump, I think it serves him to go and get perp walked. Go put the handcuffs on, man. Walk down there, tell 70 plus or 80 million Americans that you just arrested Donald Trump. Put him in handcuffs. Let CNN get all their footage. Watch what happens. Watch what happens. I mean, peacefully. I'm not, totally peacefully. Just watch what happens. If they want to arrest him, if I were Trump, show up right there with a big smile on. Smile for the mugshot and let it go. Zulu on a scale of 1 to 9/11. See, now, according to Joe Biden, Zulu, that's way worse. It's actually not even a big deal. Joe Biden totally forgot about 9/11 because the worst attack on our democracy was 1/6. Not Pearl Harbor, not 9/11, 1/6. So how devastating will Trump's indictment be to the functioning of this country, considering an entire ideology hinges on one person? Well, I don't think that at all, Zulu. I have to respectfully disagree with you on that one. I think the thing that outrages me about all of the Trump Inquisition is the perversion of our justice system. I'm not even all that in love with Donald Trump in this segment, in this context. But the prosecution of a former president by a hack political prosecutor it imposes on justice, not just on Trump. And this is why I get so irritated with all of the other Republicans who don't speak out about this stuff. Like, do you think Ron DeSantis is immune from this crap? Do you think Nikki Haley is immune from this, or Mike Pence is immune from this? No, it's just Donald Trump. The rest of them will be indicted. Trump is just the first person to make it socially acceptable. So all of those people who don't stand up and say, all right, this is enough already, they're kind of non-entities as far as I can tell. If they do indict him, now if they don't indict him and this is all just, much ado about nothing and they didn't say anything and maybe they knew nothing was going to come of it or something, that's kind of a separate issue, maybe. But I still think the political prosecutions of political candidates in America is nuts. And like, if we're going to do it with Trump, then we might as well go back and do it with Hillary, go do it with Obama, make sure Joe Biden is eviscerated criminally. Everybody else has to do the same thing, right? Equal standards apply. And then literally there's no country anymore. Right? What's the point of a political process anymore? It's just whoever wins gets control of, it's like capture the flag, right? You control the area. You control the DOJ, you control the FBI, you control the Capitol Hill Police. It's the end of the country. So it's not about Donald Trump. I don't really care who it is. It's about the weaponization of the DOJ, which has really, been what a huge part of this channel has been about this entire time. Regardless of the person being, it's what my whole purpose of being a criminal defense attorney is. It's about the principles. It's not even about the person. That's how criminal defense attorneys represent some of the worst people in the whole world, accused of doing the most worst things to children and old people and all sorts of stuff. Because it's about the principles. It's about adhering to the Constitution, because if we let the Constitution be trampled upon for that one person that everybody says, oh, he's the worst, it never stops there. And so Trump, it's sort of a line in the sand. But I understand your point, Zulu. On a scale of 1 to 9/11, Trump's indictment would be a problem. How devastating would it be to the functioning of this country? I think it would be pretty devastating. But I disagree with your premise. I don't think it's about that one person. He just happens to be the symbol of a lot of this nefariousness. They've never treated anybody else like this in this country ever. I mean, George Bush would be like a close analog, but he was still one of them through and through. Here, Chris is here. What's up, Chris? Thanks for the sticker. Mayor of Batesville is also in the house. Says, in the theocratic dictatorship of Batesville, Bragg would be disbarred in order to wear a t-shirt that says not based for the rest of his days. I like it, Batesville. Sounds like a nice place. Batesville. Well, let me know where it is. Maybe we'll all move over there. Sounds nice. Eddie Block is here. Eddie Block Film says, I'm not sure why they're making a big deal about my dog. Eddie Block was referenced in the tweet thread, right? That was the, now I don't know if that's actually Eddie Block who's going to be in court tomorrow, but I would agree with you. I don't know why they're making a big deal about your dog if you are the actual Eddie Block. Sounds like a very handsome boy. A Saint Bernard. Hopefully that is all resolved. And the real good boy goes in and he helps with some good testimony. And he gets a real good treat and a belly rub after the fact. Shout out to Eddie Block. And thank you, Eddie, for the super chat here today. Fred is here. Fred and his rascally dog, Johnny's in the house. He says, Rob, Johnny talked to Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General. Dog Johnny said, hey, Merrick, you do this and millions of ex-Trump supporters are right back. If I have to come down there, you're not going to be happy. Whoa. Wow. Johnny's fired up too, boy. That's good. So Johnny's fired up and he's going to come down there and talk to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland's a kind of a big weenie over there. But, Lisa Monaco is probably the person also that we're going to want to have a conversation with, a peaceful conversation about this stuff. But obviously this is inappropriate and Johnny knows. And Johnny's a powerful force of nature. He also says, a Saint Bernard? Seriously? Ugly dogs, says Johnny. Well, I guess to each his own, Johnny, to each his own. I like all dogs. I don't know what that makes me. What are my pronouns if you like all dogs? Voice of the People says, the Trump arrest sounds fishy. Who will announce the date and place they will arrest someone? Yeah, it's generally a good rule, Voice of the People. They generally don't, which is why you have these things. They're called self-surrenders. And it's all done, quietly. It's so that you don't have to. I've done these where a client will come to you. They'll say, hey, my car is hanging off a bridge right now. Okay, well, let's work through this problem. So let's figure out where you are. Are you safe? Okay, great. So work through the problem, have a conversation with law enforcement, and you incorporate a time and place for a self-surrender. And that's where there's a organized time, date, location. So they don't go raid your house, don't go raid your office. Generally, it's when the defense reaches out, say, hey, I know you're investigating our client. Just so you know, our counsel's our client's represented. They're willing to talk or willing to handle this in a way that is amicable so that we don't have to do all of the fireworks stuff. And that's kind of what I thought was happening here, which is why Trump said on Tuesday, because he was sort of agreeing that he was going to go down there and turn himself in. But it's looking like that might not be actually what is happening. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening. And now turns out that is not the actual date or not confirmed. Alberta Traficante says Trump did a recording with the J6 choir. Proceeds go to the families, but it was removed from iTunes after hitting #1. Oh, I did see that. I didn't realize the proceeds were going to the J6 families. That's good. Yeah, that's good. I think there should be a lot more attention drawn to these guys because it's just egregious what's happening to them. Very, very gross. I don't like it at all. All right, let's check in with some of our other friends from across the fruited plain of the internet. Our friends over on Rumble, who is in the house over there. We got Dog Digger. We've got Coach. Oh, that's not a Coach one. Yeah, it's not a Coach one. Fairy Dance. We got Army Brats over there. Army Brat says, we need to restructure the job of the government by the people. Now that we've learned what the founders did for us with the Constitution, yet the writings in their journals they wrote about their worries. Dog says, Rob, they're scared that they're going to disrupt their agenda. Oh my gosh, we had a couple super chats come in. So first of all, Janet is here, says, I love my St. Bernard. I love my St. Bernard from Janet. So do I. I'm sure he's a very handsome fella. And then it looks like Eddie Block is here. Eddie Block says, yes, it's the real Eddie Block. Well, welcome to the show, Eddie. And my service dog's name is Donald J. Temp. All right, so shout out to Donald J. Temp, the service dog who's hopefully a real good boy in court tomorrow with Eddie Block. All right. So best of luck, Eddie, there tomorrow. Hopefully it all goes nice and smoothly over there in court. But all right, my friends. And so that was from over on Rumble. Let's see who else is on Twitter. Say hello to some of our Twitter friends. Because we are streaming over there. And we have a few people watching. Holy moly, this is crazy. We've got 5 viewers on Twitter. Whoa, out of control. If we get to 10, I think the whole system breaks. So be careful. We had a couple come in. Yukon says, for anyone looking to protest, if Trump does get arrested, just remember that Lady Justice is no longer blindfolded. So be safe and be mindful. Yeah, yes, I completely agree with that, right? A lot of what we've been talking about here these last 2 weeks or so has been Proud Boy Telegram groups filled with feds, testimony from trial filled with feds, one after the other. They don't want to talk about it at all. And so remember that on January 6th, that was pre J6. After J6, they have gone psycho, right? They have gone steroid maniac mode. And they are dedicating billions of new dollars. They are opening new offices. They're asking for hundreds of new prosecutors, new law enforcement. They're forming new homegrown domestic violent extremism task force and all this stuff. So it's only escalating. And I don't think it's going to be like this forever, but they are pushing hard to try to consolidate power. And okay, so Eddie's clarifying. It says that the dog's name is Donald J. Trump. Okay, so Eddie said this, the dog's name is Donald J. Trump, driving there now, driving over to court. All right, Eddie, well, drive safely, my man, and good luck testifying tomorrow. Hopefully things go nice and smoothly. And I'm curious about if that's going to show up in the transcript tomorrow. Do we have a fight over Donald J. Trump, the dog, showing up in court? Objections from the prosecutors. Salt Farmer says, man, Biden's reaction to those questions about his family and financial dealings look like, oh crap, I'm getting arrested. Just sheer terror. I have to turn you off when you play Weisman videos or I'll vomit. Sorry about that. I have to listen to them too. All right. We all have to know what's going on out there. Have there been any Antifa identified at the J6 rally? I don't know. It's a good question. If they are, I haven't seen them being prosecuted. It's all a bunch of ultra MAGA extremists. Danny says, if Trump's arrested, it's going to be a new world. The law in the U.S. will be gone. The vote in 2024 will show it. From Danny McWilliams. Yeah, Troublemaker says, please do indict Trump. Then every American with a spine will get involved filing civil suits and amicus briefs. Saying, yeah, it's something to behold. All right, so those are our friends over on Twitter. And thank you, everybody, for following along over on Twitter. And, of course, we are going over to Locals for our beautiful after party for our members. If you're on YouTube and you're a member, you can also join us. Just click the community post button and join us in the Telegram, where we will hang out for a little bit further. But on Locals, we had some very, very nice tips come in. Thank you, everybody. Wims is in the house. Thank you very much, Wims. Extremely generous. Very nice of you. Thank you so much. And Dennis is here. Says, God bless you, Rob. God bless Trump and Biden and all our elected leaders. Make them wise and wiser. Very nice comment from Dennis and AK. I would love it if all the people in charge woke up and realized what they're doing and became better leaders with more humanity, more empathy, more competency, more results. That would be a good thing, but not hold my breath. Calm and Free says, hey, Rob, could Trump get a public trial? If so, you should go in person and do a week from DC. Yeah, so I sort of speculate that Trump is going to, if and when he does get indicted, it might be multiple indictments, right? He might actually get indicted in New York. You might see another one in Georgia. You might see another one by the feds. Feds might indict him. He might have 3 different trials. So it could be Georgia, could be New York, could be DC. Yeah, I mean, we might have to do something like that, Calm and Free. You're right. We now have the freedom and the space to do that. It's time to turn up the power level a little bit over here. GSD Lady says a civil war is what they want. We can't let them win. We have to figure out a way to fix this. Yeah, civil war is, it's a civil war. I think that there are better ways to approach it. And one of the ways that I talk a lot about is sort of an exit rather than a divorce, which can be messy. It's an exit, just like in a business. I have some familiarity with that. It's not as messy as a civil war. You just exit. You just say, you know what, there's a better way to do things. We're just going to do things a different way. And if you want to live in that old system, we're just going to take America into our own system. And there are ways to do that. Not enough to get into that here. But I think there are infrastructure components that are being built as we speak. GSD says there were several Antifa there. I have no doubt about any of that. No doubt about that. All right. And so that's over on locals. So question in the chat, what other ways? What do you mean exit? Well, so there's a book called The Network State. If you want to dive into that topic a little bit more, check out thenetworkstate.com. And it's a free book. It's online. Don't have to pay a thing for it. This is what it looks like. It is this concept, the network state. In one sentence, a network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states. Okay? Just one concept. The network state in one sentence. If you want to look forward to more, go to thenetworkstate.com. All right. And so, my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going to leave it there. Before we wrap up, I want to thank you for being a part of the program. And don't forget to come and join us over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you're on YouTube as a YouTube member and you're a member, click the community button and there's going to be a Telegram link in there. Just scroll down, grab the Telegram link, click the link, and join us. Members on YouTube, members on locals. Also, don't forget to head on over to fieldofgreens.com. Get your Field of Greens so you can get your vegetables and your fruit and feel energized. The vegetables want to be eaten. Look how happy they are. Look at them dancing away. Eat me, they're saying. So order yours, fieldofgreens.com, and save 15% with code Robert. Also, if you know anybody in the state of Arizona charged with a crime, send them on over to rrlawaz.com. Also at 480-787-0394 if they need help. Also, our mods, shout out to our mods, our friends Vientikis, Prime, K-Bean in the house, Just Cause. We've got Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu in the house. Thank you, Zulu, for the tips today. Gio, as Zach Nichols, and John Allen mod down the fort for us over on our telegrams. Also want to say shout out to our friend Sleepy Dogly on Twitter and Geegum Geegum over on locals. But that, my friends, is it for us. We are going over to our debrief and our after party. And so I hope to see you there. But if not, we are done for the day. We will be back here tomorrow with Trump indictment news, with Proud Boys trial day 40, with whatever else happens to unfold all across our America and the world. We'll be here to cover it, and I look forward to seeing you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous rest of your weekend, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.